Burgess. He is a member of the Energy and Commerce Committees and a medical doctor himself. Congressman Burgess, great to see you. Your reaction to the press conference yesterday?
Oh, it's startling. And, here's the thing. Had the president just stayed in the basement like he did for his entire campaign and the press not questioned him, things actually might be better today than where we find ourselves this morning. But in addition to all the things you mentioned, let's not forget also the rampant crime in our country that is just really just been so destructive to our citizens.
Well, I mean, it strikes me that these two major issues didn't come up. Crime, which is spiking, major cities are reporting murder at a 25-year high, and the president makes no mention whatsoever of that, nor the border crisis. We've got a record number of migrants coming across the border, drugs killing American citizens, the illicit narcotics that we've spoken about in the past. Fox has learned that Customs and Border Protection encountered nearly 179,000 migrants in the month of December. 55,000 of those were released into the country. That doesn't include the gotaways. Nearly 142% increase in apprehensions from 1 year earlier, Congressman. What is it going to take to get these numbers under control, and why does this administration ignore this wide-open border crisis?
Well, number one, what it would take is the administration would have to be serious about enforcing the law along our border. They're not. So it is, at this point in the state of Texas, it's up to our governor. And Governor Abbott has stepped up. I was down there just last week looking at the border wall that the state is building alongside or adjacent to what they call the Trump wall or the federal wall, where all the work was stopped a year ago today. And the material's just left on the ground to rust. But the state has stepped up and is in the process of completing that wall. But that's not the way it should be. The state does not have that responsibility. The state should not bear that expense. And in fact, I promise you in 2 weeks' time, when we're talking about funding the government again, the federal government has to reimburse the state of Texas for the expense of putting up that wall.
Yeah, well, will they? I mean, at this point, the president hasn't even mentioned funding the government. I know that the funding expires in February, and yet they've been pushing this federalizing election bill through and trying hard to get that through, thanks to Democrats who stopped it, Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema.
Yeah, and we've done no work. This week in the House, there's virtually no work going on, and you're right. In 3 weeks' time, we come up on an appropriations lapse for the federal government. Everyone will have their hair on fire saying Republicans are going to shut the government down. No, it's the ineptitude of Joe Biden and congressional Democrats that is putting the funding of the government at risk, and people need to understand that.
And that didn't come out yesterday either. Meanwhile, you've got Vice President Kamala Harris. She's supposed to be the border czar. She's taking a trip, she claims, to tackle the root causes of illegal immigration, but she's not going to the border again. She's going to Honduras. What is the point of these trips?
I don't think anyone can readily identify that. Look, the trip to Honduras, fine. See for yourself what's going on the ground. I did that 3 years ago. I learned a lot while I was down there. But go to the border. Go to, in particular, the Texas border. Go to the El Paso sector. Go to the lower Rio Grande Valley sector, which I did within the last 2 weeks. I've visited both sites. You will learn a lot on the ground from your federal agents who are anxious to talk to you. They have a story to tell, and the vice president, the border czar, should listen to her agents.
Well, let's go back to that press conference for a moment, Congressman. Tell me what struck you most, because we went through a number of the issues that the president brought up. He said the nation's problem is COVID. He said wages are up. Wages are not up. He said that he created jobs, and he said that the supply chain crisis is not that bad. And he said inflation was an issue before he walked into the office. And he actually said all of this.
Further evidence that he's completely out of touch. And again, I go back to my original remarks. Had he stayed in the basement for this first year, he'd have had a much more successful first year of his presidency. Look, the press was remarkably incurious about what the president stood for and what he would hope to accomplish when he was in office. And they never asked him during the campaign. And now we're seeing. And unfortunately for the American people, this is a disaster.
Yeah. Congressman, we'll be watching the developments and what this means for the GOP come the midterm elections. Of course, it's good to see you this morning. Thanks very much.
Good to see you.